Me right now is Florida Senator Marco Rubio. He is the vice chairman of the Intelligence Committee and a member of the Foreign Relations and Appropriations Committee. Senator, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Before we begin, let me just make clear I'm the man on the screen with the gray suit on.
Yes, you are. Let me just, that was just outrageous. We were talking about Kamala Harris and that introduction that she gave earlier. I don't know why they're still doing this, Senator. Really, it's hard to believe.
I just don't want to get in trouble, so I want to be clear.
Okay. Well, let me get your take on the CHIPS bill. Assess it for us. We had so far Marsha Blackburn, as well as a number of your other colleagues, talking about it as a massive boondoggle once again. How do you view this CHIPS bill?
Well, I'd say two things. The details of these bills matter. You know, I want people to understand we need to make semiconductors in America. We'll never be able to do it if we don't help, because these companies that we're competing against are subsidized by the Chinese government, so they're going to undercut us no matter what we do. The problem with this bill is, number one, it has a massive loophole in it that would allow companies to continue to take taxpayer money and build chips in China. And number two is it had weakened all the protections. So they're already stealing our research and development. Now they'll just be able to steal more of it because there'll be more of it available for them to steal. So I tell everybody, I tweeted it this morning, people remember that tweet in the future, when the stories start coming out about how companies that are getting taxpayer money have been allowed by Commerce to continue to build chips in China, or when the stories come out about how China, we increased our investment in semiconductors and China stole that investment, people will remember this bill. I wanted to support this bill, but I can't support a bill that has those loopholes in it.
Yeah.
I just can't.
John Ratcliffe calls the China strategy rob, replicate, and replace. That is the ultimate strategy when dealing with foreign companies. They rob the intellectual property, they replicate it, and then the ultimate goal is to replace them, put that company out of business. Why did Chuck Schumer take out the Senator Portman provision, which apparently would have which would have stopped Chinese intellectual property theft, apparently?
I think there's two reasons. The first is apparently someone in the House, the universities and the research places got to them. These guys don't want any restrictions. They want the money for the research, but they don't want to have to go through an intelligence screening or any sort of security screening. And the other is some left-wing activist groups who started saying that those restrictions were racist, that those restrictions were anti-Asian and things of this nature. So it's really unfortunate. And I think the reason why they took it out is they want to pass a bill. I mean, these guys are so desperate to put some wins on the board. They don't care what the bill does or if the bill is weak. They just want to put some points on the board before election year so they can claim they got things done. And, you know, we'll pay the price later. And that's unfortunately how a lot of public policy is being made in America today. And that's why China continues to gain on us.
So does this have the potential to becoming another big spending package toward green initiatives? I know that we all agree that we need to have manufacturing of critical items like semiconductors in the United States. So walk us through why this doesn't just do that.
Well, I mean, part of the challenge is the way you describe the research and development. Look, I think in some cases they've narrowed the bill more than it used to be in terms of some of those provisions. But understand, I think people have to understand this, because if you don't write the law very precisely, then you're leaving it in the hands of some bureaucrat at the Commerce Department to make a decision about what you meant. And it may not be what you intended. So legislators here in Washington and Congress, they write bills and then they walk away from it, and then they come back a year and a half later and realize, oh my God, the people that are implementing this stuff are doing whatever they want with it because no one's paying attention. And so you create these potential loopholes, not just for money to go to companies that are building chips in China, not just for China to steal intellectual property and research and development, but potentially for it to be interpreted in a way where semiconductor investment leads to investment in the development of green energy technologies that are frankly not justified at this time by the ability of those technologies to produce energy in a cost-efficient way for the country.
Well, Senator, we've had a year and a half now of bad policy resulting in bad outcomes. And now White House Economic Advisor Brian Deese says that even though Americans are facing 40-year high inflation, well, we're better off than this problem. Watch this.
Obviously, the high prices are hitting Americans very hard, but they're in a way that is different from some places that are facing famine, for example.
Famine. So we should be grateful that we're not facing a famine.
And these guys play word games all day. I remember, it was just like Joe Biden screaming at gas stations that are independently owned, screaming at gas stations who make a few pennies per gallon They're not owned by the oil companies, screaming at them to lower their prices. And, Joe Biden that's now bragging about the fact that gas prices have come down. I'm happy about that. They're still way over $4 in some places. But he was telling us a couple months ago he had nothing to do with gas prices. So if it was Putin's fault that gas went up, is it Putin?
Yeah.
Should we thank Putin that it's going down? It's absurd. But here's the fundamental challenge we have in American politics today. The modern Democratic Party does not care about working Americans. Their entire agenda is driven by laptop liberals and the demands of Marxist extremists, and they completely ignore what's in the best interest. In fact, they are hostile to the interest of Americans. So 40% of Americans are struggling to pay their bills. 50% of Americans are increasing the debt load on their backs. And these guys don't care. We're going to focus on what that element of the base cares about, because those are the people that raise money for them, and those are the people that threaten to riot if they don't get their way.
Well, they're also pushing this green agenda and pressuring portfolio managers to invest in ESG. You were really among the first to point out the incredible hypocrisy of investing in Chinese companies that don't even follow the auditing rules in the United States. Earlier this morning, I spoke with Senator Tom Cotton, who is calling on BlackRock for answers about being the environmental police. Here's Tom Cotton. I want to get your reaction. Watch.
Any CEO or any investor who's thinking of joining the climate cartel better talk to their lawyer, and they better be wary, because when we win the Congress, I'm going to make sure that we conduct oversight and expose these practices. It's not just Joe Biden's administration who's refusing to sign new leases or issue permits for new drilling in a timely fashion. It's his buddies on Wall Street who are trying to starve oil and gas companies of the capital.
Which is why the letter was sent to Larry Fink of BlackRock, Senator.
Yeah, look, and I think shareholders and people that have investments through these firms need to be asking some questions, because they're not acting in their best interest, but it's also damaging the world, not just the country, the world. Germany's going to have a potential crisis this winter with energy because they went green and rely on Russian gas. I remember when they were laughing at Trump about that, and he warned about that 3 years ago. It's actually turned out to be the case. We have massive global underinvestment in refining and drilling capacity. Why? Because all these woke governments around the world are signing agreements saying we're going to put fossil fuel companies out of business. And they're threatening them if they invest in them. So they're not investing in this. So we now are going to have, not now, but for decades to come, if we don't correct course, we're going to have some very serious problems with the production of energy around the world. That's going to hurt the developing world, but it's actually going to hurt Americans too. So, and all of this is driven by this hysteria. I have no problem with energies that, if they can figure out a way to make a battery in the U.S. That works, that's cheaper than putting gas in our car, people will do it. But we're not there yet. And in the meantime, we need all of these activists that fly around the world. They fly around the world using jet fuel. And our economy continues to rely on that. And when those prices go up, the people that pay the price are working Americans who can't afford to buy one of Pete Buttigieg's $65,000 electric cars.
Yeah. And yet the administration is so disingenuous about it, blaming the oil companies, saying, well, they're making all these billions of dollars and they have leases, they just won't drill. Why wouldn't they just not drill?
Well, why would any business that's being told, we're going to put you out of business in 10 years, but we need you to do more stuff now, why would they invest in that? They are basically, Joe Biden said, I am going to end fossil fuels.
That's right.
Well, if you're in the fossil fuel industry, why would you invest?
Yeah. Senator, it's great to get your insights as always. Thanks very much for being here this morning.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Quick